Hello, should we kick this thing off then? Let's do this. Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to the panel section part of the Finnish Film Affair. My name is Johanna Karppinen. I'm the CEO of Audiovisual Finland. Sorry, I don't want to be my back giving to you, but you know my face as well. So. Right, so at Audiovisual Finland, our job is to help Finnish film and TV companies go international. It's a non-profit platform that the producer and filmmaker associations in Finland has set up quite many years ago. Many of our activities actually take place at the international arena, doing matchmaking and more strategic programs of Finnish producers and projects to find international partners, but we are also active in Finland with initiatives that aim at equipping our producers with relevant knowledge and prepare them to go to the international marketplace, to understand the trends and what's cooking, what's going on and why. So it makes perfect sense for us to partner up with the Finnish Film Affair and share these common sessions and jointly welcome international guests to Helsinki. I have to say, on a personal note, this is a sad moment for me because I'm moving on from Audiovisual Finland in the coming weeks, but I want to take this moment to thank our friends and colleagues at the Finnish Film Affair and also at the Love and Anarchy Helsinki International Film Festival for the great collaboration and good times that we've had over the years. Is there Julia and people? Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been really fun and I hope, and I'm sure that our paths will keep crossing in the future as well, but just wanted to thank you publicly for everything. But let's go to today's topics. We have a great day of wonderful people, wonderful panelists, and very topical issues to cover. I need to grab my little notes because I want you to meet our old friend from LA, Aram Leipzig, who will be moderating the panels today. Adam is a seasoned producer, and now I'm going to my notes because it's so the list is exhaustive.
Keep it short.
I will. Okay, so Adam is a producer and has been a producer, distributor, or supervising executive on more than 30 films. That have really disrupted expectations. Titles include A Plastic Ocean, The Wonderful March of the Penguins, Dead Poets Society, Titus, and the likes. His movies have won or been nominated for 10 Academy Awards. Okay, this is breathtaking. 11 BAFTA Awards, 2 Golden Globe Awards, 2 Emmys, 2 Directors Guild Awards. Okay, the list keeps going on. 4 Sundance Awards, 4 Independent Spirit Awards, etc., etc. But, apparently this is not enough. He's a real underachiever because he also publishes the magazine Cultural Weekly, teaches as a faculty member at the University of California, Berkeley School of Business, advocates for the creative communities at Creative Future, and as the CEO of Entertainment Media Partners, Adam advises investors and producers in media and entertainment ventures. Okay, there we are. So please join me in welcoming Adam as a moderator. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. So good to see you. We are sorry to see you go from the current position, and we look forward to the next incarnation and continuing to work together. Hi, everybody. It is fantastic to be here again. It's a pleasure to welcome our extraordinary panel. We're going to get right into it. We're going to have plenty of time for questions. If you have questions as we go, raise your hand or something, and sometimes I'll be able to stop right away. Sometimes I'll ask you to hold your question so we can keep a flow going. We're going to try to keep this moving quickly. To start, is there someone in the house right now who has a finished feature film that does not yet have any distribution deals at all? Okay, I see a hand in the far back. What's your name, sir? Mikko? Mikko? Okay, Mikko. And what is the title of your movie? A Remembrance? A Moment in the Reeds? Okay. You do not have to pitch your movie at all. That was yesterday. Okay, so to start our panel, just as an introduction, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to talk to Mikko. Now, let's just pretend that you have seen Mikko's film, A Moment in the Reeds, and you love it. You would love to work on that movie. We're going to start with Aram Tertzakian at XYZ Films. Y'all can pick up your microphones. The mics are all live. In about 30 seconds each, Aram, could you tell Mikko why he should work with you? What you and your company would bring that would be special for his film?
Well, Mikko, first of all, it's the best movie I've ever seen. And so let's start right there. You're not going to find a bigger fan. My company, XYZ Films, we're a production and international sales company. One thing that is unique about us is we can work with everybody else here on this panel in terms of selling and licensing films to them. We've been around for about 10 years. We've produced about 50 films to this point and sold several more than that. We had a Sundance winning film this year. We had a BAFTA winning film last year. And having seen A Moment in the Reeds, I think you have the potential for both.
All right, excellent. Now, Mikko, that was a great pitch, right? But before you say yes, I think you have to hear from a few other people. You all agree?
Not really.
Yeah.
Laura.
Hey, Mikko. We at Elisa Viihde would love to work with you, and as the biggest local service, we are able to make your movie a big hit also in the theatrical window, like helping you with the release and making your movie the next top 3 title at least, also in TVOD and SVOD.
And could you talk for a moment to Mikko about exactly what Elisa does?
Yeah, we are the market leading service in IPTV, OTT area, and also in TVOD, and we serve the all Finns. So you don't have to be an Elisa mobile or fixed network customer to use our service. So, and we have all the shops around Finland. So we also have the places on streets where you can get like visibility for your movie as well as online.
All right, so that's another choice, Mikko. And maybe these choices are not mutually exclusive. Maybe you can make deals with more than one person on this panel.
Yeah, we also cooperate with all the distributors and players in the market.
And Bobby Allen from MUBI, what do you think about Mikko's movie and what you might you be able to do for that film?
Mikko, I love your film as well. MUBI is a global VOD platform dedicated to great cinema. So we have a very unique model. There's only 30 films. Every day you get a new film, and one that's been there for 30 days goes out. So all the films we program with context, and they're curated. In terms of theatrical releasing, we only release 6 films a year in the US and the UK. So every single film we release, we put a tremendous amount of love and passion behind. So if we distribute your film, you know you're going to get like the best possible distribution.
Excellent, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Adam Chapnick from Distribber. What is Distribber? How does it work? And how could it work with someone like Mikko?
What's so special about Mikko's film, to me, is how he's built a passionate following himself. He has a newsletter of, say, I think he told me it was 7,000 to 10,000 people. They're passionate about his niche subject matter that I'm also passionate about now. And what Distribber makes possible from films like Mikko's is that he can now self-distribute and keep all of his rights. He can use Distribber and pay a flat fee like a toll booth. It's not a distributor. It's just an access point to iTunes, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and a whole bunch of other TVOD, SVOD platforms, and he can keep all the revenue forever. So if he knows he has an audience, why should he share the revenue that he's generated, he's done all the work to create with a distributor when he can just put his film on all the same platforms that a distributor puts it on and keep all the revenue? Of course, there are some very worthy distributors in the world, and we work with them too. But in a certain case, like Mikko's, sometimes he might make a ton more money using a self-distribution choice like Distribber.
All right, great. Well, everybody, that was our introduction. Thank you, guys. That was great. You've also now been on the receiving end. You can see how incredibly persuasive distributors and VOD companies can be. Today's discussion is about VOD panels. 10 years ago, it might have been about theatrical distribution. Today, it's about VOD distribution, which sometimes works in concert with theatrical and sometimes not. We're going to explore all of that and what it means, and I think we're going to kind of go sequentially through the process of getting your film ready and bringing it to people like those on our panel, and then what the process would be like once you have made your deals. Mikko, thank you for letting us be the point of focus for the beginning, and we hope you do really well with your movie. Let me start by just asking, and Adam, I'm going to start with you and then work back down the panel. Very quickly, at what point do you want to get involved in a movie? Do you want to see does Distribber want to see a script, or do you only want to see a finished film? When do you want people to come to you?
We only deal with finished films. And so, we'll deal with any finished film, whether you have an audience or you don't. And if you pay, we're a toll booth. I mean, I'd like to sell us more glamorously, but the best way to understand us and why we're so great is because we're so simple. We're just a place you pay to get on a place you want to be. Now, you may or may not be prepared to be there, but we still will put you there. So what we try to do is help you understand if you're prepared to be there, the best we can. But if, there's a variety of reasons that films want to be in, for lack of a better word, wide release on VOD. Sometimes it's because they think they're going to kill it and make a ton of money. Sometimes it's because they think, they've tried, nobody wanted it, let's just get it out there, and they don't care.
All right, so let's take an example of a movie you recently worked with, Jake the Snake.
Okay.
Could you tell people what that movie is and then how it worked within your system so people can get a real practical understanding of how it works and why uniquely it could work with your system?
Sure. So the title of that film is called The Resurrection of Jake the Snake. It's a doc that won Slamdance, not this past one, but two festivals ago. And it's about a professional wrestler named Jake the Snake, who was popular in the late 70s and early 80s, and the trials and tribulations that he's gone through in his life. And the film has a kind of an odd built-in following of fans of professional wrestling and Jake the Snake in particular. And it got a bunch of offers out of Slamdance, but the producers decided none of them made sense to them for a variety of reasons. And they knew they had this connection to the fan base, and they thought they could do a better job self-distributing. So they came to us, and we arranged with them to get an exclusive on iTunes, which is possible sometimes, depending on the film. And iTunes agreed, yeah, that seems cool. They have a built-in audience, and it's got this niche appeal. And so we created a short exclusive for iTunes, and iTunes was willing to feature it, not in some crazy way, but just in a modest way on the front of documentaries. And long story short, they ended up becoming #1 in documentaries, which once you get up above a certain level and you're featured, the sort of organic traffic can really propel a film, and it did really well. But the reason it did really well, I keep saying the same thing in some ways, but it had a built-in audience, and it had a filmmaking team that was committed to staying involved through the distribution and iterating their marketing based on feedback from the audience. So they did some super interesting things with Facebook, where they posted the trailer, and they did some landing page marketing. They posted, Jake the Snake movie, and it linked to a trailer, and they would A/B test 2 trailers. And the one that got more traction, they dropped the other one and made a 3rd trailer and A/B tested 2 and 3. And the one that got more traction, they dumped the other one and made a 4th trailer. And they didn't put a ton of time into it, but they just figured out that they could get more traction if they had better trailers. So they stayed involved in a very active way. And I think that helped drive the click-through to iTunes a lot, and the proof was in the pudding.
Right. Two quick questions. One for you, one for the audience. How important was having the exclusive with iTunes to getting iTunes to promote it up for them?
It's, there's no way to say definitively. Obviously, it's sort of...
I think it's an incentive to them to want to do that and give it a push.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were willing to do it's sort of, by definition, they were willing to promote it because we gave them an exclusive, and had they not wanted to promote it, they would have not done that deal.
Exactly. All right, so the issue of having an audience has come up a couple of times already. Just out of curiosity, right now amongst everyone in the house who are filmmakers, creative people, producers, do you have, just out of a show of hands, do people currently have, or are you working on building your own audience in terms of followers, social media followers, etc.? I see about maybe 35% of the hands. Okay, we'll come back, we'll stitch back to that in a moment. Aram.
Yes.
When do you want to see a movie? And and then maybe I'll ask you a follow-up question about a couple of the films that you've recently worked on.
Great. For us, so my company is a production and international sales company. We work on about 10 films a year and sell all of them. So about half of those films will be films that we produce in-house, and about half of those films will be films that come from third-party producers from all over the world. For us, when we see a film is a good question, and it's a different answer all the time.
Sure.
So for films that are bigger in budget, English language, and with notable cast, we want to see those films at the earliest possible stage of script before there's even a package, and a package meaning director and actors, or we want to see it when there's a director and a couple actors in place. The reason we want to see it at that stage is so that we can weigh in and be helpful to the process and work with producers to say, if you're considering these 4 or 5 actors, we recommend actor A and actor B because they have the most foreign sales value around the world, and we can help you monetize your film better with certain actors versus others without trying to step on their creative choices. So that's one answer. With foreign language films, it's often a different story because foreign language films are usually endemically built in for their home market. And so we're not in a place to say, cast Finnish actor A or Finnish actor B. That's for the producer to decide. But when there's footage for the film, or when there's a rough cut, or as soon as we can see the film starting to come together, if we have a feeling it's going to be something special, then we want to get involved.
And as an example, could you talk about the film Apostle and how you got involved, and then how it worked through Netflix?
Yeah. I'll actually start with Under the Shadow.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so and the reason being is it was a foreign language film. So we worked on a film a couple of years ago called Under the Shadow that was an independent film, not produced by us. It was produced by a British company called Wigwam with a Persian-British director named Babak Anvari. It was shot entirely in Jordan. The subject matter was about the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s and about a mother who is basically locked into her house because of the situation going on around her with her daughter and starts to slowly lose her mind. So it was kind of a thriller horror drama, and it was all Farsi language. So that one for us was, we were not involved in the financing of it. We were not involved in the development of it, but we were involved as the film started coming together in terms of seeing footage and starting to get a sense that this movie was going to be something special. And what we ended up doing on that film was, and where everybody here can be really helpful for producers, is we worked with the director and the production team to figure out the best way to monetize the film, knowing its limitations being Farsi language, a period, a lot of things working against it in the broader marketplace. We figured out the best way to get deals done for the film that would preserve the most upside while also hedging their risk. So to give you a little bit of feedback on that, the film premiered in Sundance last year. We did a Netflix deal going into Sundance for worldwide SVOD, subscription VOD.
In other words, before Sundance, before people saw it at Sundance, you were able to make your Netflix deal.
Correct. And that deal, I can't get into specifics on the numbers, but that deal gave them a lot of comfort in terms of where their financial risk was, while also preserving upside for them going into the Sundance Market Festival and showing it to the world for the first time. And so what happened there was the film got great reviews out of Sundance, and then we were able to, despite the fact that one set of rights were already off the table, we were able to do territorial deals with individual distributors for what you call wraparound rights, which are all the other rights that are not the Netflix rights.
What were the Netflix rights in that case?
SVOD.
And what does that mean?
Subscription VOD. So that basically means any kind of subscription service that you pay for in order to access films on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis.
And so Netflix had exclusive SVOD rights.
They had exclusive SVOD rights throughout the world, but what we were able to do on behalf of the producers was to negotiate a window with Netflix. And we can, I'm sure we'll talk more about windows on this panel, but we were able to negotiate a 90-day window, meaning that from first exploitation to the film, wherever that was outside of Netflix, we had 90 days until Netflix was able to exploit it on their platform. And once it's on Netflix, then you lose a lot of your financial upside because obviously they have 100 million subscribers around the world, and those people have already paid for the service, so they're probably not going to go to iTunes or a theater or any other option to see it at that point.
Right. We'll come back to other examples.
Sounds good.
I'm going to go to Laura and then to you, Bobby. Laura, could you talk about when you first like to take a look at projects? And maybe the example you could also talk about is a television project that you recently worked on, because I think everyone in the room is both interested in features but also in television series and limited run series. So perhaps you could give us an example of that, and also particularly when you like to see things first.
Yes, when regarding films, we usually get involved when the script is ready and the producer is trying to fix the financing. So we are writing LOCs for the Film Foundation and so on. And it's usually good if the producer has an idea of the other distribution, so has already negotiated with distributors. So because there are many we work with, but they have different policies on what kind of rights they want to have. So that also gives us the idea what possibilities there are for us to buy. So in some cases we get all the like the distribution to the distributor company, or sometimes there's SVOD available, or sometimes even the whole VOD window, and what are the exclusive windows available and all that. So that's kind of good to know.
What about television?
That's usually also in negotiation at that time, or might be fixed, but it's still nowadays it's usually the 2 years from the theatrical release. So there's the two-year window that we are talking about.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Bobby, when do you like to see a movie, and how do you, and maybe give us a couple of examples from films you've recently worked on?
Well, yeah, so basically, as I was saying, we're a VOD platform, an SVOD platform. But as we started to grow, what we realized was it was going to be very difficult for us to buy films in the first SVOD window, meaning this sort of 90 days or even sooner after theatrical. So actually the easiest way for us to control all of those rights would be to control all of those rights, so basically to acquire all rights rather than just the SVOD rights. But more importantly than that, we started to, we go to all the film festivals, that's where we acquire our films, and we noticed this terrible trend of all of these wonderful films, particularly foreign language, non-English speaking films, that would launch in the film festivals and not get any distribution, or maybe distribution in just a few territories. So as cinephiles and people who love those films, we found this very, very depressing. So what we figured out was actually, given what our brand is about, which is great cinema and being cinephiles, for MUBI then to enter the conversation, to be on the big screen, to be part of the theatrical release process would create a tremendous amount of brand value for us and just feel like a natural progression. I mean, the truth is, we really feel that these films deserve a chance. They're made to be seen on the big screen, and they deserve a chance to be seen there. So we sort of dipped our toe in the water initially. And actually, I'll tell you the origin of the first time we saw the value, especially of having exclusive content and launching exclusive content, was that Paul Thomas Anderson reached out to us. And turned out he's a big fan of MUBI, and he's like, I love you guys, I love what you're doing. I've made this music documentary with Johnny Greenwood. It's just like a 1-hour music documentary. and I don't want to do a theatrical release. I would like to just, give it to you guys essentially to launch it for me. So we said, okay, great. And what we did was we did a whole campaign like a theatrical release. We premiered the film in the New York Film Festival. And we just saw this incredible engagement around the world with like all these fans. People were tweeting and having parties, like, because we did a whole countdown, the film's going to launch. And that really gave us a case study to see that there was a lot of value as well. And that the theatrical release itself, as we've learned, as we've released more films theatrically, actually still builds a lot of value for the film through the ancillary rights chain. So we said, okay, let's after the Paul Thomas Anderson Junun experience, we're like, okay, let's dip our toe in the water, let's start releasing films. And we go to the film festivals and we acquire these films. And really what we believe is that each of these films that we release, and we only do theatrical in the US and the UK, but each of these films should have not only a bespoke marketing campaign, but also needs to have a bespoke distribution strategy, meaning that these windows that we're talking about, whether you go and do the full theatrical holdback, or you do day and date where the film is on multiple platforms at the same time, every single film is different and will need to have its own strategy. So a really good example of this, if you don't mind, is a hometown favorite, The Happiest Day in the Life of Olli Mäki, which was a film we saw in Cannes last year and absolutely loved and managed to acquire the rights for the US and the UK. When we went to release the film, in the US, if you want that film to succeed, you need to be in the Landmark Cinema chain. And the Landmark Cinema chain absolutely has a policy. You have to do the 90-day holdback. You cannot show the film on any VOD platforms before 90 days. So
I'm I'm not going to stop your story. I just want to interrupt for the House that in the United States, the UK, and many other countries, when you have a theatrical release, the actual cinema location, that particular house on that street with that specific audience matters a great deal. And if you open the right movie in the wrong place, it dies. So actually being able to negotiate to have your film on the right screen with that audience makes all the difference in the world. Now, carry on.
Yeah,
it had to be with the Landmark Cinema chain in the U.S.
Yeah, you needed those. It's exactly right. These cinemas like have a built-in audience, and you can match your film to that audience. So we said, okay, and again, we're a VOD platform, so it's like we're saying, okay, let's do the full holdback, which kind of actually puts us in the situation that we were in before we started doing our own theatrical releases, which is waiting, some time before we can actually show the film. But that's fine because it was the best thing for the film to maximize the theatrical audience. In the UK, the best cinema chain, but particularly the best cinema for this film is the Curzon Bloomsbury. It's absolutely the cinema that you need to open a film like Olli Mäki in. Curzon actually has their own VOD platform. So they're pushing a premium VOD experience. So their idea is that the films they distribute, and increasingly the ones, because they're distributors as well, but increasingly also the films they program for exhibition, they want those films to be available on this platform all over the country on the date of release. And they charge a full ticket price for that. So you have to pay the same as if you were going to one of their cinemas. So they said to us, look, we're going to program this film, but we really, really want to have it on our VOD platform as well. So what we said to them was like, okay, look, we will let you have the film on the VOD platform, but we want a guarantee of more than 1 week in your cinema. And that's really important because even a film like Olli Mäki, which is a wonderful film, entertaining film, but in an Anglo-Saxon territory, it's a black and white film in the Finnish language, which is a tremendously difficult sell to an audience. And a film like that is going to need more than 2 days to prove its worth in that cinema. And that's how they judge you. You release a film like Olli Mäki on Friday, on Saturday, they're already judging, oh, well, only 100 people came, so we're not going to program it next week, which is sort of ridiculous. As we were saying earlier, it's like you need at least another week to get people to go to the dinner party and tell their friends, or at least Sunday to go and tell their mom, I saw a good movie or whatever. So So it was really important for us to negotiate that extra time. And we did that, which meant we had to push the MUBI date back by a month. So the film was day and date, sort of modified day and date in cinemas and online in the UK, followed by a month later on MUBI for 30 days. It's always just 30 days, and then on iTunes, Amazon, etc. So I think that's a really good example. Had one film, two territories, two totally different strategies, but very important, like to have the right bespoke strategy for each film. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to come to you next, but I want to check in with everybody here. We are talking fast. We are talking a lot of insider language. We're also speaking in English. So I want to check in with people in the audience. Is there anything at this point that we should explain more, that's confusing, that you have questions about? Because we're going to keep building on what we've discussed. Is it all so far making sense? Yes? Yes, please.
Can you just clarify, why did you wait for the month after the cursor?
The question is, why did you wait for a month after cursor? Or maybe just repeat the question, if you would, for the microphone.
So why did we wait a month and allow Curzon to have this exclusivity online? Two reasons, really. One is it was part of the negotiation. So I think that's a really important point, though. I think everything is negotiable. We're in a market that's totally fluid and changing almost month by month now, and I guess we'll talk more about that later. But I think everything's up for negotiation. So if somebody tells you this is a rule, I would just ignore it and try and negotiate what it is you want, with that distributor or whatever. I think also because for us, it's more important to give the films the best opportunity to be seen in the cinema than it is to have it on MUBI. And that really is like something that we're very, strong. I know I've mentioned a couple of times, but it's just, so for example, we did a Lav Diaz retrospective. For those of you who don't know, Lav Diaz is a Philippine director whose films, a short Lav Diaz film is like 6 hours long, and a long one is like 10 hours long. And those films, even someone like me who loves art house cinema struggles to watch that at home. You need to go to the cinema. That is the place where these films deserve to be seen and should be seen. And the whole experience of going and committing yourself, especially to a foreign language art house film, in the cinema, it's a totally different experience. And yeah, we really believe in it. And we tell our audience to go see the film in the cinema. It's like, imagine Netflix has a film and you go log into Netflix and there's a film there and they say, you can't see it here, go see it in the cinema. That would be amazing if they would do that, because that's such a powerful platform to do that. Well, us in our small way, that's what we're starting to do, is to try and push people to still go to the cinema. But then you can, if you missed it in the cinema, you can catch it on MUBI.
It's better to have it just on one online platform than two devices.
Yeah, exactly. And well, it could be multiple platforms. It just depends. And that's also the point. Every single film is going to be different. Sometimes you want to do it on multiple platforms. Sometimes you'll negotiate exclusivity. It all depends.
I think one of the themes that we're going to see throughout is the custom nature for every film. Every movie is different. Every movie has its own personality, its own audience, and needs its own pattern for distribution and marketing. Question for the audience. For those of you who make feature-length movies, how important is playing in a cinema to you? Raise your hands if it's very important or that's not so important. We have a few hands. I'm saying 7% of the House. Adam, a couple of people have said theatrical release gives a lot of value to a movie. Do you agree?
Yes. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Kind of.
Maybe sort of. What do you think?
I would go back to what you said right before that, is that it's bespoke. It really depends on the film. And it also depends on which theater you're doing it in for that film. But I think it also depends on how much you can support the theatrical. And it depends on what does the theater do to support the theatrical. So I'm a little bit removed from my theatrical booking days, but in the US there are certain, and I'm sure everywhere, there are certain theaters that have their own list. So if you don't have a list, you can sort of become like, what do you call it, a benevolent organism sucking onto another organism. What's that called?
Parasite.
Parasite, but a good one, on their list, right? If you have a film, you need to reach people who have already raised their hand saying, I will see blank. And if it's not your film, it's that they've raised a hand to see, I will see what that programmer programs. So sometimes a theatrical can really help a VOD in that way. In other times, like, and Landmark is a great example of another kind. It's sort of instead of a pull market, it's sort of a push marketing phenomenon, where they've got art house cinemas in urban areas around the US that have been there, and people just know that the films that are there are usually interesting. They don't really have much of a newsletter, but they have sort of a habitual attendance from the right people that might see your film. But that can get expensive and difficult to promote. So I'd say sort of. My experience is that you're far better off as like a wild blanket statement. If you don't have someone like Bobby, like hustling for you, which most people don't, build your own goddamn list. My God, it's so much easier. Start now. Start yesterday. I have a totally inappropriate thing that I say that's taken from film. This is totally inappropriate, but it just works. I always say to filmmakers, the list is life. And if you know what that's from, you know why that's totally inappropriate. But it's true that you can't expect to have an independent film career and be like, fuck marketing. That's your job, folks. Sorry. You have to learn marketing, know your audience, and get them following you now, because that's how you'll have a career. Sorry, that was my stump speech.
That was excellent. And that's Adam in a very easy moment.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I promised my...
You promised my mom you wouldn't, right?
Every time I leave to come to a panel, my wife says, don't say fuck. I did it again.
That's 3 times now.
Okay. Aram, just for definition purposes, in the simplest possible way, could you just define what windows are and what the windows are?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Windows are, basically windows are how and when a film can be seen on different kinds of platforms. And so traditionally speaking, those windows are theatrical first. So you can see a movie in cinemas, and when it's in cinemas, you can't see it anywhere else. Then a certain amount of days later, it could be 30, 60, 90, 120, depending on the deal that's negotiated. Then it can start appearing in other windows. And that's when it often becomes a lot more complicated. In our experience as a sales agent, traditionally those windows are theatrical, then transactional VOD, meaning iTunes, Google Play, basically places where you make a transaction. You go and pay one time to see a film. That also includes cable VOD, which I actually don't know how it works here, but we have major cable providers like AT&T and Time Warner in the States. When you watch cable TV, you have options come up that say, watch this film, and they do some kind of advertising for it. And then after that, you get subscription VOD and TV. So it's basically broken down into amounts of times when different platforms can monetize your asset. And to take a quick step back, basically you're making a film which is a bundle of rights, and that bundle of rights is where the value of the film is. And what we're talking about with the windows is the different types of rights that can be monetized. And if all things go well in one or several of those windows, you have an opportunity to make money.
Exactly. Laura, I wonder if you could talk about how windows work here, and particularly how they work or don't work in terms of cinema release and release on Elisa.
Yes, I think we in Finland have quite fixed 120 days theatrical window, which we've also been trying to kind of not maybe to challenge, but kind of to discuss when it's great for those films that maybe only have like 2 or 3 weeks live in the cinema, and then there's this holdback or like dead period before the TVOD comes, maybe even 3 months, and you have to kind of market the title again. So we most definitely see that the theatrical window is important also for us, because the top list is kind of basically the same. But then we see that there should be flexibility depending on the title.
And what's the difficulty in getting the flexibility?
well, I think it's the market situation in the theater.
You want to talk about that in this room?
So diplomatic.
Would you like to talk about what would improve the situation for Finnish filmmakers so they can spend their marketing money once and let the audience know that it's there, and then quickly after it leaves cinemas be able to get it on VOD? How that would improve their situation? Or should I just say that?
Please go ahead.
It's my pleasure. If anyone in cinemas are listening, it will make a big difference for filmmakers if films can be seen very shortly after the theatrical run. As soon as it leaves the theater, if it can get onto transactional VOD. Because right now the problem for filmmakers is that all the marketing money is spent for cinema and then people forget about it by the time it comes onto VOD. So that would be a big difference. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to add that we have good experience from premium pricing, so that when we get the title early to the TVOD window or in the future as an EST, pre-EST window, so people are really willing to pay for it. So, for example, last year with the Date Meistä Kauniin movie, we really saw good results with pre-TVOD window. With even people paid 25 euros just to see it early.
Right, makes a
on
big
their
difference.
couch.
Did you have a comment on that, Bobby? Or?
No. I just thought, well, yeah, sort of. I was going to say also because MUBI is also available in some emerging markets where piracy is really like the number one way to access these films. But even then, we also find like if you make the film available in really high quality and charge for it, people are willing to pay. So even in a place like Turkey, for example, where piracy is rampant, we have a really good subscriber base there because there's always enough people who sort of learn about the films or find out what you're doing and say, like, okay, I'm willing to pay the price for that. So making the films accessible is a really big part of this as well.
You know, I wasn't going to bring up piracy, but since you mention it, it is part of my soapbox because I do a lot of creative rights advocacy work. Piracy is killing the independent film space. Killing us. Killing us much more than the studios. It costs the studios a lot, but the piracy number on an independent movie, and I track this every year. We look at the Sundance movies that have come out the prior year and look at how many illegal streams and torrents have been off of a movie. Could be as many as 20 million. And if you say, well, only a few of those people would really have paid, let's say only 5% of those people would have paid, and let's say they would have only paid $3. Now, by the way, the 5% is low. There's been some good academic research that the real number is closer to 15 to 20%, and $3 is low for a transaction. But let's say only 5% would have paid, and let's say they only would have paid $3. Well, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's probably the budget of the movie. That's the difference of whether you get to make your next movie or not. For a studio film, that might be their catering budget. But for us, it's our whole budget. So piracy is killing us, and it's an issue everywhere.
I just want to pick up on that because I think the answer is sort of like what Adam's doing because, again, I think you can't stop it. It's just always, it's always going to be, whatever you say about DRM or geo-blocking, it will always be an arms race with people who will always break it and always be a step ahead of you. So I think the way to counter that is to do exactly what Adam is suggesting, which is if you have, even if MUBI or someone won't pick up your film or buy your film, educate yourself, learn how to market your film, give access to people through a platform, working with Adam or people like that. So take control of your content. And actually through that, you might end up having a very rewarding situation. Like I met this German music executive who told me about German rappers who were like nowhere. Nobody wanted their music. They couldn't sign in any major labels. So they had to do everything on their own. They had to like create their own audience networks. They had to distribute their music themselves. And now they're like the richest, most successful artists in Germany. And it's like, I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's not easy. Why should you be a marketeer, a producer, and everything else? But the best way to combat piracy, in my view, is to learn those skills and make your film accessible in a place where people can see it in high quality and pay for it.
You know, a moment ago, Aram, you talked about windows, and you sort of broke it down and said they're really just bundles of rights. Yeah. One of the things we were talking about earlier is that producers and filmmakers do not always have clarity of all the different bundles of rights that there are. I'd love the panel to just enumerate those bundles of rights, because you may not know all the rights you have, what you can keep and hold back, what you can't hold back. Could you start, and then I'm going to ask others to fill in?
Yeah. So, and really quickly to close the door on the importance of theatrical release. That's a nuanced answer that's changing every day with time.
Yeah.
One thing I can tell you guys as an international sales agent is that the size of the U.S. theatrical release is often very important for the foreign sales around the rest of the world. So there are some certain key metrics, like if we take a film to market and we have a U.S. distributor on board who's guaranteeing at least a 1,000 screen U.S. release, our foreign sales are going to be several 100% higher than they would be otherwise, just because there's already a wave and there's going to be a lot of marketing spend to create awareness for that film in the U.S. and by extension throughout the rest of the world. And then that number can be as low as 50 screens, where we have certain deals with studio divisions abroad, such as Universal and Sony, who will buy multi-territory parts of Europe and Asia. If they know we have at least a 51 screen release in the US, they'll pay a bigger number. Or in some cases, they'll actually bake that into the deal and say, if you don't get 51 screens, the deal's dead. So that's just something to be mindful as well.
Right. And so if you would enumerate,
yeah,
that was great. If you would enumerate rights, and Laura, I'd love you to listen and fill in what Aram misses.
Yeah, so absolutely. So you have a ton of different rights that come with the film. There's everything from theatrical rights, VOD transactional and subscription VOD rights. There's pay TV and free TV rights. There's DVD rights, which are worth a lot less now than they used to be. There's music publishing rights. There's remake rights. There's amusement park rights, where, you know, novelization rights. If your movie works out and somebody wants to write a book or several books based on it, then there's those rights as well. So I don't have them all on top of my head, but that's an example of some. And
as a long list.
Yeah, as a foreign sales agent, what we do is when we negotiate our deal with a producer, we'll take all of those rights, or in some cases, producers will hold back some of those rights. And what we'll do then is go monetize those rights individually or collectively with one distributor or several distributor in each territory to try to get them as much value as possible.
Laura, anything Aram missed? Anything else we can fill in for the audience?
Not really. Maybe to say that like first pay or the pay windows used to be kind of the next after TVOD and before the free TV, but now I think nowadays SVOD has kind of replaced, or premium SVOD has replaced the first pay window basically. And also it usually goes so that the TVOD kind of continues throughout the SVOD and free TV window, and often in free TV windows, there's a clause that you have to take it away from SVOD services, but there are exceptions to that as well. So it's always based title by title.
One of the other rights that we've been able to hold back is the ability to sell your movie yourself from your website, which you have to ask for, but is really important. And maybe if I have time, I'll even get into a case study of my recent film. But you know, obviously people who are working with you always have that, but not always if they're making deals with other distribution companies.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's mostly true. Sometimes we'll work with companies that do SVOD, like even we work with Netflix, actually. When they acquire an SVOD only, we'll actually work with them to do the wraparound, to do TVOD for the filmmakers. And sometimes we help them set up their frigging website so they could sell their own damn movie on their own site.
Exactly.
But there's also a really interesting thing for the, you know, sort of the scrappy world, which is Orly here? No, shouldn't. Okay. So there's a company called the Film Collaborative that has been doing a lot of basically what I think she just calls it festival distribution, where she's actually monetizing festivals as a distribution channel, which the festivals will pay select films that are interesting to play at the festivals around the world. And she's making filmmakers in the six figures in just festival distribution. And that's something, I mean, I didn't even know it was, I was like, damn, that's awesome. And then there's also educational, I don't think you mentioned.
Right.
Which for certain films, especially docs, but also lots of films, that's a waning arm of the business, I think, sadly, but it's got several good years in it. But that can be meaningful to certain kinds of films.
It can be very meaningful. There's been a lot of conversation about marketing, what filmmakers need to do. This is a really good time for me to do another check-in with the House. Are there, at this point, questions, clarifications, other things that are coming to mind? Yes, please.
I've got a question for Elisa. If they go in with development of projects or if they're planning to in the future? We do original series where we kind of want to be involved from the first stage, like from the concept, developing the scripts and so on. But with the films, we haven't gone there yet. So mainly drama, scripted drama or comedy projects.
And when people come to you when you're developing scripted drama, do they just come to you, what do they need to come to you with? Just an idea, a script and a director, casting? What do you need to make it enticing for you?
Well, there are also options at different stages. Sometimes producers do development on their own risk and have already pilot and maybe even a director fixed, but it depends. Mm-hmm. But we also try to develop ideas together with the producers.
So you're willing to take something at the very early idea stage if you love it?
Yes.
Very good. Other questions? Yes, please.
I had a question regarding the previous issues, but the way it works that if you sell a film after, let's say, like a festival premiere, and it takes quite a while before all the foreign distributors and the different territories get the film out there, and kind of like the publicity and the hype is going down all the time. Like, how could I prevent this from happening, or how could I work around this? Like, do you have any tips or like what to do as a can be frustrating for a producer just to wait that maybe it's going to maybe some company maybe works out.
Right. Did everyone hear that? It's about the lag time between when a movie is at a festival and has a lot of hype, and then when it can finally get out or maybe make its sales and find its audience, different territories. Bobby, do you want to talk about that?
I don't actually know the answer to the question, but we do have some experience with that, just in that we also have a model where we, sort of like the Junun Paul Thomas Anderson story I told, where we find a festival film that we really like, but we just don't think there's enough in the film in order to do a full theatrical release, but we want to premiere the film on MUBI. So when we started talking to sales agents about doing this, I know a year ago, they said, sounds good, but let us come back to you after we've done that basically year of festivals. And then within like 6 months, we noticed that some of the sales agents, and they would wait a year, some of the sales agents after 6 months would start to come to us after like 6 months. And then now a lot of the sales agents will come to us after like 3 or 4 months. So that lag time between making a decision from launch to making a decision about which of these distribution patterns is the best thing for the film is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But of course, it totally depends on the producer and the sales agent. And these are decisions that you're going to have to make. Do you wait, or do you go with what you have in hand and use that as a stepping stone to the next phase? And some of those films that we premiere, even though they've been on a platform, we're still quite small, so we're not really a challenge to some of the bigger platforms and buyers, that in some territories, they'll still make all rights deals after we've premiered the film.
And part of the answer is what Adam was saying before about your own responsibility for marketing and owning your audience and bringing your audience along with you to keep the enthusiasm there, which makes your movie more attractive to distributors in the first place, is to bring your audience along. I'll tell a case study, which is the film that I have out now. It's a documentary which is called A Plastic Ocean. It's sort of an interesting thing, because in this film, our objective was not to make a lot of money. Our objective was to get a lot of views. One of the things that I think we would probably all agree, that when you're talking to filmmakers, the question is for the filmmaker, what do you really want? Do you want a lot of accolades and opportunities to walk on the red carpet and go to festivals and people say you're a great filmmaker and meet your fans? Or have the opportunity to make the most money, or get a lot of views? Pick one. You will not necessarily get all three. In fact, very rarely will you get all three. You have to figure out which one is the most important for you. So in this case, it was a documentary, which is a social impact documentary. The nonprofits, the NGOs that financed it just wanted to have social impact. They wanted a lot of views. They were non-equity investors. They didn't care about getting their money back, but we still had to get distribution. So we made the movie, then we made all the marketing materials for the movie. We made the one sheet, the trailer, a very good website, created a coalition of more than 200 NGOs internationally who were concerned with oceans, plastic pollution, water quality. And on one day, with coordination with them, we asked them to push out to all of their members and subscribers this trailer, which we put on YouTube and Facebook, and said, please tell everybody to see this trailer. It got pass along, and in 12 days, we got 500,000 views of the trailer. The next week, we took it to distributors and said, we have this movie, 500,000 people have been passing along and sharing this trailer. It was a very persuasive comment, a very persuasive argument to distributors that there's a built-in audience for the film. We ended up selling the SVOD rights to Netflix. We did a theatrical and transactional VOD release before that. And it is still being screened at festivals. We're still getting festival requests. Festivals are paying us to see the movie. And it's screening in legislatures and doing other social impact screenings. So it's an example, and that release pattern and that example only worked for this movie because we could have social impact and create a coalition. And I think it really goes to what everybody's saying about how bespoke the pattern for every single movie needs to be, that it's only custom for that movie.
Is anybody here a social impact documentarian? Does anybody make social impact docs?
Okay, gentleman back there.
Okay. All right, well, then I'll tell you later what I was going to say. That's one guy. But quickly, to your point, easy trick that a guy named Robert Greenwald sort of was famous for pioneering. Sure. And he was a political activist documentarian in the States. When he made a film about Walmart and how evil it is. He made a film about Fox News and how evil it is. But when he did that, he went out to the organizations that existed pre-production and knew he was going to make a film about Fox called Outfoxed. And there are all these organizations that have large lists that are dedicated to spreading news about how bad Fox is. Similarly, Walmart, how bad Walmart is. And he said, hey, I'm going to make this movie. Would the head of your organization please appear in it as an expert? And so he had this litany of giant newsletters in the film. So when the film came out, he didn't have to go around and then make his partners. They were all baked into the film, and he had a 3 million person list that did the work for himself. And that you could probably do that with
And that does work for fiction films.
Yeah,
as
stars
well.
And things, right?
Where there's a social cause that can be somehow attached to the fiction film and then mobilize the community of people who are interested in that kind of social action. One of the things that we could also talk about is about scale of release. And Bobby, I wonder if you could talk about people who can do deals with you. They're either licensing deals or revenue share deals.
Oh, yeah.
How that works and what information they get in one model or the other model and why they might want that.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think first of all, there is a problem, and I hear this from a lot of producers, that there is very little transparency in terms of what these films are actually doing in terms of engagement once they're locked up in a platform like Netflix or Amazon. And I really think this is a problem for producers because actually the beauty about digital distribution is there's tons of data. MUBI is actually 10 years old now. We have 8 million social users globally. So we know which films people are engaging with in Finland versus Japan, et cetera. And that's information that we're able to use then to create program and acquire content. You as a producer don't have access to that information. So when producers or their sales representatives come to us with films, we give them two options, basically. We say, well, we can give you a license fee, which is a flat fee that we negotiate for a certain amount of time to show your film. Or we can do a revenue share. And almost inevitably, everybody wants the license fee. They want the certainty of the cash up front. If they took the revenue share model, that means that we have a nice contract where we have to report lots of information to you. So suddenly you have access to that information. Who's watching my film in Finland? Who's watching? And that's really useful as a producer to know that and to be able to build that into future deals and future films that you're making. So the people or companies who do the revenue share deal with us tend to be like the bigger companies, like, for example, Gaumont, a large French studio that has a deep library of amazing classic French films. They were one of the first major companies to do a global revenue share agreement with us. And the reason they did it was they just purely wanted to see, are people interested in Chebrol in Indonesia? It's like, oh, wow, they are. So then they take that information and go to Indonesian distributors or platforms and say, look what we did on this platform. Why don't we do a deal with you? And it rolls from there. So it creates value. But I think, yeah, it's important to try and arm yourself with as much data as you can and find strategies to get the data.
And it sounds like one of the other themes about VOD release in general is that there's actually data on the audience who is watching the movie, which is something you don't get in theatrical release. We don't know who's buying the tickets. Even at the Landmark, we don't know who's buying the tickets. In fact, I'm not sure Landmark knows who's buying their tickets. But you know, and filmmakers do not always know, unless they do a rev share model with you, but you always know, and therefore your capacity to have all that data allows you to make better and better decisions.
Yeah, and getting back to the original question about why you should bring your film to MUBI, it's like there's 8 million users there, and if we come to you to acquire your film, it's because we know we already have the audience for your film. We see the characteristics of what they're interested in, and there'll be something in your film, whether it's the cast, the story, the type of film, etc., that will going into it, we already are. It's like these guys, they're already interested in this film, and we talk to them every day. They come to MUBI, they read our editorial, we interact with them. And again, that's what Netflix and all these guys are doing. That's how they're making their decisions. They're using this data to acquire, the best content for their audience.
Right. To put a little bit of data around that, Netflix analyzes 80 billion data events every day. A data event is you sign on instead of your spouse. You decide what genre you want to go to. You look at comedies. You flip through 3 comedies. You watch 3 minutes of one. You stop. You go to something else. Each one of those is a data event. Their number crunching, their data analysis is so excellent that 96% of what you watch on Netflix they've recommended to you. It's kind of amazing, and that's really the value of the VOD platforms. You get all this data. Another good moment to stop. Questions, comments, concerns, things that are freaking you out. Nothing. Nothing's freaking you out. Yes, sir. Social impact filmmaker. What's your name? Hello.
I'm curious about the kind of, because there's strong undercurrent right now about the big media companies versus sort of below the line or social impact filmmakers, for instance, that we are actually crushing against the big media companies, including broadcasters, including Finnish Broadcasting Company, but nobody dares to say that usually out loud because it's impossible to make a documentary without their support. So is there any kind of, do you have any advice or how to, because actually the time when you are making the film, it's the most critical, and it takes one year or 2 years to make a documentary, and you can't get support from that anywhere.
I have a comment, but do you have? I'll just my comment, and I'm making one documentary a year now, and my business model for documentaries is that they are all supported by NGOs who are not equity investors, and what they really care about is a lot of views. They don't care about getting their money back. It's very difficult in the global market to have enough budget for a documentary and be able to say you're going to get that money back, because as you know, the revenues on documentaries are small or certainly unpredictable. But it is possible to go to an NGO or a coalition of NGOs and say, for the amount of money that you might spend on a marketing campaign to tell people about your cause, for that same amount of money, you can make a documentary which will tell a story and tell a narrative in a powerful and emotional way. And it's probably the best way to reach the people you want to reach, and it is something you will have for 5 years. So that's what we're doing for our documentaries, but I'd love to hear how other people are approaching it.
I would just add specifically, there's enough competition and parity out there amongst the big players that, you know, if you were to make a documentary about, it would have to be something pretty broad and specific to a whole bunch of different companies in order to get shut out and be in a place where you'd have to self-release against the tide. Obviously, if you were to say a documentary about why Netflix is evil, maybe Netflix isn't interested in that one, but Amazon and a bunch of other people are. And conversely, if it's about how Amazon's evil, there's a bunch of people who are interested in that too. If it's about how capitalism is evil, great, they all want it. You know, even though they're all capitalists, they all want to get out to a broader audience and get people talking about it. So I would say that it's often a bigger perception out in the marketplace than it is a reality, and there's usually a niche buyer who could also be a major player who's right for you.
Laura, does Elisa do documentaries?
Yes, we do, but we usually buy those when they are already filmed.
So you buy them as acquisitions?
Yeah. Because as you said, it's really difficult to predict how each title would do.
Very hard. Adam, do you have a comment?
I mean, I would agree with you. I think, and then go back to the Robert Greenwald example. I think if you're talking about the quandary of finding money to make it, I think Adam's model is a great one. And if you're talking about finding distribution once it's made, I think Adam's model is a great one also. But it all comes down to aligning yourself with larger lists. I hate to sound like a broken record, but there are organizations that are dedicated to raising awareness for at least 2 or maybe even 3 different slices of your pie. You know, you may have to think a level down, like, oh, my film is about X, and there are organizations about X, but if you think about it, it's also about Y, and there are organizations about Y, and then even Z. And so it's doing that kind of deep thinking, but also outreach. So you know, there are companies in the U.S. for sure that have come up, like Film Sprout, or you know, all they do is take on social documentaries and do grassroots outreach for like a year, just for what you're talking about in advance of the release, and then even throughout and after the release, to just get more and more word out, spread the word. And it includes educational, it includes like every which way, like I was saying, to get just eyeballs on it. But you can't do it without those bigger lists.
More questions? Comments, concerns? Yes?
So about MUBI, I mean, so far you release films theatrically only in the UK and US, but would you be, willing in the future to do that in other territories, or?
Yeah. So
producing or investing in films in production?
Yeah. Well, the question is, would we start theatrical distribution in other territories? And the answer very simply is yes. As we grow in the territory, absolutely, we will do that. It's a model that's really working. And the second part of the question was, would we invest in films at an earlier stage? And the answer there is also yes. This is something that we've just started talking to people about over the last maybe like 6-8 months. And what we think is, because again, we have this structural advantage of already having a relationship with the audience for these films, that we thought, well, of course, we can wait till the films are made and go to the film festival and acquire them, and that's great, and we'll keep doing that. But what if we came earlier with some equity for example, maybe like a mix of equity and advance against, say, the UK rights. And then, most importantly, we're able to add a lot of value when the film launched at a film festival. So, betting on the films that we think are going to have a great festival launch and activating this community to get excited about the film and really like bringing extra marketing to the table. So by doing that, to hopefully even like help the sales agent get a premium in territories where MUBI is also streaming already and not necessarily tying up those rights. So again, yeah, we think we would like to come in earlier. I'm talking to a few producers here already. We just have to find the right film. Of course, our initial aspirations would be modest. We're not going to go and finance a $20 million film all of a sudden. But we think for sort of independent art house, auteur cinema, we can really add a lot of value as well as some cash to get the film made.
Thank you. Next question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Timo from VOD Fund.
Hello.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for the great insight. I would like to ask that way that about some pitfalls in doing VOD deals. You surely have many experiences to share that what kind of problems and issues there might be when producers start to do the VOD deals.
Okay, I think thank you. Love that question. Okay, panels, let's maybe put you on the spot. Tell us about the pitfalls. Aram, may I start with you? And can you be specific? Tell us about a specific movie or two and the problems. And just let's go briefly so we can try to get to as many pitfalls and blind alleys as we can.
I mean, the single biggest thing is windowing. It's going to come down to that every single time. So with a deal with Netflix, there's no back end, there's no upside. It's not a situation where you can negotiate a bad deal because X amount of people watched it and now you didn't hit that bonus or that bump, because those deals, at least not yet, don't exist with those kinds of buyers. I think for me personally, it's all about windowing, and I can't speak to specific titles, but we've had situations where we've accepted a 30-day window because the deal was so much better, and that completely shut us out of some other possibilities. And there's been, conversely, other situations where we've extended it out to 120 days, and that got us a little bit less from a Netflix or an SVOD partner, but it definitely didn't make its value up in that 120 days. And so it's about finding that sweet spot. It's working with the right partner who can model it and has tons of transactional experience to be able to tell you 90 is important and here's why, or for your film 120 is critical and here's why, or actually you could do less and get away with it and here's why, or that you could just do an all-world SVOD deal and forget about all the other rights because the delta between what Netflix or Amazon or whoever's willing to pay versus what you can get out there in the open market with those other windows, the delta is too big. You got to take the SVOD deal.
Laura, pitfalls?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Aram that it usually comes down to the windowing, or the producer might have made it one deal already that closes the other windows. So kind of not to should keep the options open so that you know what's the best possible.
Bobby.
Yeah, completely agree. These are like really difficult decisions, and you have to like almost have a crystal ball and take risk and say, am I going to go with this or am I going with that, and take the risk. I know a producer launched a film at Sundance. They got the Netflix offer. He wasn't convinced. His sales agent was convinced that they should close the deal, and he didn't want to do it, and they didn't do it. And the sales agent pretty much dropped the film, and it hardly sold anywhere in the world after that. So, you're in a constant battle there to make the right decision and also be with good partners, I guess, who you're aligned in, you're thinking with. I would say also thinking a bit about transactional VOD, because of course it's great, to sell a film to Netflix or Amazon. It's fantastic. But also I would say that there's a lot of pitfalls with iTunes and Amazon transactional platforms, in that it's great, you can be on iTunes, but if you're not featured, if they don't push your film, and it's very difficult to get your film featured on iTunes, you're kind of nowhere. You can just be on iTunes and get 5 views, and you go through a lot.
You say that again, you can be on iTunes and get 5 views?
Yes.
You
that is
can be on
entirely-
iTunes.
That's a
and
real
get-
thing.
That's
Yeah,
a
that
real
is a real
thing.
thing. You could be on iTunes and get 5 views.
So this is an incredibly powerful platform if they feature you. And yeah, so that's something to think about as well. That's a big pitfall. Like, I'm going to be in this platform, but how am I going to market, and let people know that the content is there?
Anything to add, or have we covered it?
No, that's the only in specific. It's a lot of times we see a filmmaker who thought they were smart 4 months ago and did something, and
Yes.
it screwed just everything else.
Can you
up.
give an example? Because that's why I was about to add that they sold something, and it got in the way of a much bigger deal because now they didn't have the whole bundle of rights to sell, or
Yeah, well, no,
give
yeah.
another
Off the
example.
top of my head, it was like PBS. They did something with PBS, but PBS has SVOD, and so they can't do anything else. Or they got themselves on iTunes, and it's just out there already, and so that screwed the pooch.
too late.
And
Right.
so, there's just, it's always the producer. What Bob was just saying, as much as I'm always railing on about like, do it yourself and go, which you should. Part of that is, when I say do it yourself, you have to surround yourself with someone who knows what you don't know, and that's like these people. And so you can make an informed decision about what's laid out before you. Often the best choice is do what they say, but often, maybe for some people more often it's not. But you're a fool if you don't listen to people who know more than you. That's the first thing.
excellent. Yes. Any other questions? Is there someone who really, really has a question and has not said it yet, but they really, really need to know? Really? Nobody? Something that's burning in you? Yes.
Hi, my name is Metta, and I'm asking about the short form.
Short form films.
Yes. Or series versus the features.
When you say short form series, like what I might think of as web series?
Yes.
Do any of you work with either short films or with web series, and what do you do with them? Do you, Adam?
Yes.
Okay. Talk about that,
We
because
do the same. We put it up on all the platforms. They don't perform at all, but there are often good reasons to do it. Again, some shorts have bigger lists than features, and if it suits, I would say most often, as a gross generalization, shorts will serve you in your career more than they will serve your pocketbook.
Yeah.
And so if you can pick and choose where you want to put it and then promote that it's there, a lot of times I've seen legitimacy come to a filmmaker and the short because it's on certain platforms, even if it's just iTunes, believe it or not, because they aren't just saying, here, look at my Vimeo link. This is a film I made in my basement. It's like, oh no, this is a film. It's on iTunes, and here you can go rent it.
Does Elisa do short form series? Very, very short series?
We've been collecting short films, so we kind of because it's difficult to get them raised, and so we've been kind of collecting this category. So where you kind of when you find one, you can kind of entertain yourself with a lot of good quality short films, and we've also worked with Uneton 48, so this short film festival in Finland for a couple of years, and kind of getting those films to our service so that they get more visibility.
And are they live action or animated?
Live action, yeah. So it's a bit difficult, but I think when you kind of bundle them in one good offering, then it makes it easier for the audience to find them.
Right. Do you do any work with shorts or short videos?
Short films we don't sell in the international marketplace. It's just not our bread and butter as far as what we do. But digital short form content is something that, as a production company, we become really interested in. There are a few companies like Vice in the U.S. and Gunpowder and Sky is another one who are really interested in, and YouTube Red, obviously, who are really interested in 10, 15, 5, whatever it is, content that can grow a subscriber base and people can keep coming back to. And as producers, we're always looking for ways to fit that with the filmmakers that we want to work with.
Okay, we're going to do a lightning round. All right, for you guys, the question is going to be, when people, when filmmakers come to you, what's the one thing you wish they knew? Then there's going to be a lightning round for any last questions, and then I'm going to ask you guys at the end just to wrap up with what you see coming in the future. Adam, may I just start with you? What's the one thing you wish people knew when they come to you that they don't always know?
How to market. I mean, that they need a list.
Okay. Message received.
Yeah.
Bobby.
The size of their audience in the territory.
That's really related to marketing, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So people are often very disappointed when they find out how difficult it is to distribute a foreign language film in the US or the UK. And I think it's sometimes a bit of a shock what the minimum guarantees that are being paid for those films are. But I think what's very important is to think about what its success looks like to you. So again, if accessing the market, those three questions you're asking, do you want it? Do you want the theatrical? Do you want to be on the red carpet? Do you want to make a lot of money? Do you want to have as many people as possible see your film? You need to answer those questions first. So yeah, it would be good if people did that before coming to us for a deal.
Just for clarity, how low can minimum guarantees be?
Well, 0 to a few thousand.
Yeah, 0 is a thing.
0 is a thing. Most foreign language films, there's a lot of companies, very well-known art house distribution companies releasing foreign language films that will not pay more than $25,000 MG for a film in the US.
On a good day.
On a good day, yeah.
Laura, what do you wish people really knew?
I think in addition to the kind of basic knowledge of windows and windowing, I think that to know about our service, that we serve the whole kind of market, that it's not limited to Elisa customers, or so kind of you can access the whole all the Finns through our service.
Aram.
Two quick things. One is that a theatrical release is no longer the gold standard. And two, that the marketing materials are for a broad audience, not for the filmmaker.
Say that, and go into a little bit more detail on that last sentence.
So as a sales agent and as a production company, we deal with a lot of producers, filmmakers, directors who we obviously want to have involved in the trailer and poster and marketing material creation process. But there's sometimes a feeling that the filmmaker knows best what the trailer should be, or what the poster should be, or what the marketing campaign should be. And more often than not, they're wrong. And it's not because they don't know their movie. They know their movie really well, sometimes too well. And the company that is distributing the film in a local territory knows exactly what they need to do to get the most eyeballs on it. And so that often leads to a disconnect where the filmmaker says, well, I don't love that trailer, I would have done this. And they have to have some faith that in most cases, the distributor in that territory did it differently because their audience wants it differently.
All right. Lightning round of questions from the house. I see a hand way back. Yes, sir. What's your name? Hi, Ati. What's your question? Okay.
Well, I can answer that
Go,
quickly.
Bob.
So we are about to distribute a film called Félicité, Congolese film that was in Berlin. It actually won the Silver Bear in Berlin. So that will be in the London Film Festival in a few weeks, and then we'll release it around the UK thereafter. And it's been a great experience because already we're reaching out to the African diaspora in the UK, and there are a lot of organizations and lists, as you say, of people that will be interested in seeing this film beyond the normal art house crowd. So that's quite exciting. In terms of data, yes, we have some subscribers in Africa, but it's pretty small. So I'd say it's like a small data set, but there is engagement there. But beyond that, I don't really know much about the territory and the competitive environment, et cetera. But it's definitely in terms of a place, interesting place to find films via the film festivals, of course. Absolutely interested in African film and bringing those films to our audience.
Has Elisa ever had an African film?
Actually, I can't tell for sure, but since we are focusing on local content, so.
Right. Have you ever sold an African film?
Yeah, we have. We at XYZ, we're very internationally focused. We have done several films out of South Africa specifically. We've got a good relationship with the IDC, which is a government funding body. We just had a film this year in Toronto called Five Fingers for Marseille that was received really well, and we're actually doing the filmmaker's next film. We had a film called I Number a couple of years ago that we've since set up as a Universal Studio remake. And we've had several others from South Africa. We're also looking to expand beyond South Africa, and I'd love to learn more about it.
Actually, we had one original series, a remake of a Finnish series in South Africa.
Fantastic. One last question from the house before we ask our panel for what they see coming around the corner? All right. So, okay. Yes, please. Hey. I think that's great. Let me wrap that into the last question, because that's a great way for us to that's a great way for us to sort of look at the future. Because the question I was going to ask the panel to close is, our business is accelerating ridiculously, and it is changing very, very fast. The business models that we would have talked about here last year are different today. So let me ask you, if you can predict, what would you predict in the next year, and then maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, if you really want to go out on a limb? And part of the next year, talk about how players beyond Amazon and Netflix, like Facebook, like YouTube, are shifting the market already. And would you be comfortable starting?
Sure.
Go.
So that was exactly what you brought up were my thoughts to answer that question. And I'd add Apple to that.
Yes, definitely.
Well, from a selfish point of view, it's great for us because we don't care. We deliver anybody, and the more people that we can deliver to, the better for us. So great, and better for us, sort of better for you, because more people we can deliver to for you. That's great. But I think also it's what we're already starting to see. If you remember how Netflix started, they touted and were tripped over themselves to be like, we're so supportive of the independents, we're all about long tail, which of course was because they're the only people who would give them the movies in the beginning. And so, but they were like, it's our mission and we love them so much, and then, cut a few years forward and you can't get arrested on Netflix for, all the people that they used to love. But if you look forward now, you can, I think, draw the same sort of arc that with the big players, people are going to wonder what's it going to be like, how's it going to work, and they're going to reach out and take a lot of risks to try and get into the market, and that's great for the independent community, not just on the people that they bet on, but you're already seeing them start to invest in weird little like short form this and that have unusual formats and breaking a lot of rules, and I'm sure they're going to be paying just stupid money because they're made of money.
So it's great, at least in the short term, until they discover that was stupid and they've lost their money. And it changes, right?
That's yes. I'll just say yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Bobby.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think those big global technology players are going to dominate this market, not just in the near future, but in the long term as well. The Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, those guys, Tencent in China and Southeast Asia, those guys are going to be the dominant players. And there will be lots of opportunity because they will fight a huge battle over market share eventually once they all get themselves established. And they will come into markets and buy up a lot of content. And there'll be this wonderful distortion and bump in value for everyone until they move on to the next thing. But the good news from platform perspective is, and also for people making, social documentaries or other niche forms of content.
10 seconds.
Is that I think underneath all that, there will be a lot of highly differentiated platforms like MUBI. There'll be a MUBI for docs, there'll be a MUBI for kids, there'll be a MUBI for various types of content, and hopefully, on a global scale. So I think that will also create a lot of opportunity for niches.
Laura, what do you see in the future?
I see more competition on the global level, but also locally, and I think that's a good thing for the industry. And we already see this boom, at least in drama and comedy side, and there's already even lack of talent, lack of writers and actors and directors, and but I also hope to see Finnish content conquering the world during the next 12 months.
You have been challenged, my friends. Aram, last comment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of doom and gloom stories out there about how the independent film business is dying and theaters are dying and all that stuff. For me, I actually see a golden opportunity and a golden age coming for the same kinds of companies we just spoke about. We're no longer at a place where we have to get a Paramount or someone, a Universal, to come on board to a film. You're not talking about their parent companies, who are some of the biggest companies in the whole world, and they're fighting a hot war over content, and content will always be king. And so, whether it's Samsung trying to get you into their ecosystem, or Apple or Amazon or Google or Facebook or anybody else, they're going to want the best content, and the best stuff rises to the top. So for us, there's an opportunity to have more money in the business and more eyeballs on your films and TV shows.
So my friends, ride the wave. Thank you all. You've been a terrific audience. I want to thank everyone on the panel. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for sharing all of your insights. And for everybody here, I'll be back at 1 o'clock with different people sitting on these very comfortable stools, who will be a spectacular panel of agents and managers, and they're looking forward to talking with you. I look forward to seeing you back here at 1.
Great. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Adam, who, amongst other things, is the moderator guru extraordinaire, as we've seen. Thank you very much. See you soon.